I didn't ask. I just kind of threw the resume out there, threw the Brown joke out there a little bit. Since we're both Browns and
right, of course, a lot of ammunition.
Yeah, just threw that out there a little bit and kind of went from there as it came about. But I mean, she was real honest. She was like, at first, she didn't know what she was going to do with it, and so on down the line. So it's good. Nothing out of the way. All righty. So here we are live, Facebook Live with my good friend Katie Pate. We're going to talk coaching journey and talk the other side of basketball a little bit, as Katie's in administration now, but I'll let her tell you about herself after I ask the funny question that I ask everybody.
Oh, I love this.
Oh yeah, you missed the funny question at the beginning. So as a coach or player or both, what was that one whooping that you took that made you realize that, I have to work at this to be very good and successful at this?
Such an easy answer. I don't know what year it was. I was the head coach at Lenore Ryan. Home game against my dear friend Ann Hancock at Wingate University. And we lost by a smooth 40. It's 40 or 50, frankly. It's probably 50, and I'm just blocking it out. And I was older. I was a little bit further along in my career, which is even harder in reminding us about how hard we have to work. But there's that one because it's in my mind most recently. But there is one, and I can't name the schools, okay, because there is a story behind this. First year head coach. My very first head coaching job was at my alma mater, Coker College. This was 20 years ago. And we're at a conference school. The year before I got there, they'd won 2 games. All right. So if I win 3, I'm golden. I have accomplished something. Right. We're on the road, conference game. We're down by 38. Okay. Down by 38 against the former conference champs. They have the final possession. There's 12 seconds left on the clock. They have the ball. We're down by 38. And their point guard, she's a transfer from Georgia Tech. I'm not going to name names. She was standing at the top of the 3-point line. Clock's ticking down. 10, 9, 8. And I'm already standing up, getting ready to walk through the line, shake the coach's hand, and go crawl into a hole before I get to the locker room. Kid crosses over in front of my kid, takes the ball up behind her head, bounces it back in between her legs, shoots a 3 at the buzzer, makes it. We lose by 41. It's tough. So as I was walking through that line, again, I can't name names on this. If there's a couple people that might stumble onto this, they would probably know what I'm talking about. And I shook that coach's hand with a Darth Vader death grip, and I squeezed it, and I said, "What in the world?" She said, "I didn't tell her to do that." I said, "But you didn't tell her not to." So take it back to our good friend, Michael Jordan, over the weekend. Of course, everybody's watching The Last Dance. For God's sakes, don't give that man any ammunition. And so I walked out of there with this bucket list of ammunition. And as a very young head coach, very young, I think I was 25 or 26, we went into the locker room and I stood in front of that team and I said, "If you'll do exactly what I tell you to do, you will never have to feel this way again, ever. But you can't deviate from it. You have to buy into it. We have to believe together that we can do it." A story for another day, what happened the following year when redemption was oh so sweet.
Oh, it always is.
Oh, sweet.
It always is.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I have and if my pastor's watching this, I'm sorry, Pop. But I have a couple schools on my list that when it's all said and done and I'm back in the driver's seat, I'm going to be scheduling those schools. But I think we all have that moment. But anyway, so just with that being said, tell us about, your coaching journey, how you got into coaching, and who some of your mentors were as coaching, and then just talk about exactly where you are today, and then we'll progress from there.
Okay. So I'm old, so the path is long. obviously grew up around the game, was really, really blessed to have a mother that was in the industry. My mom was the head women's basketball coach at the University of Minnesota. So I grew up in the Big Ten at Williams Arena as a Gopher. She cut her teeth at UCLA in John Wooden's last season. So I've only had one request whenever she leaves this earth, is that I can have her autographed Pyramid of Success. So I can put that in my office. But was in and around the sport from a very young age, and knew that there was something pretty captivating about being in college athletics, and certainly college basketball. Kind of grew up, went to school, played basketball. I started off at the University of Minnesota Duluth, a big Division II school, way up near Canada. Ended up transferring to Coker College in Hartsville, South Carolina, family in the area. Big jump, big jump. And finished my playing career there with some wonderful teammates and coaches, and some soon-to-be coaching peers. Didn't realize it at the time, but decided to jump right into the business, and was an assistant at Coker after I graduated. For those of you that are grinding and sweeping floors, my first coaching job was a $2,000 stipend there, and I was the part-time work study coordinator for the college. So I was able to do a little bit of that, and get involved. A good friend of mine who I graduated with, Gene Hill, who's now the current head coach at Georgia State University for women's basketball. He and I went to college together. And after my first year, he was at Lander University and got the head job at what was then USC Spartanburg. This is back in 1999. And he said, "Katie, come be my assistant." And I said, "Okay." And so for $20,000, I got my first full-time job, and myself and he's now my ex-husband, but we moved to Spartanburg, South Carolina, Division II. We were the Rifles, just like we talked about. Kelly Green in the Peach Belt, Kennesaw State, North Florida, all these folks that are Division I, those were all our league opponents. And so I was there with Gene for 2 years, and then had the opportunity to return to my alma mater as the head coach at Coker, and spent 4 or 5 years there. Found some really great success, and dug into the industry deep. Really worked hard on creating relationships and networking in all sports, but between men's and women's basketball, that's kind of where I picked up some of the other trades that go along with being a college basketball coach. Went on to Belmont Abbey as their head coach after Coker, so led the Crusaders over there, and had fantastic leadership. Elaine Keeby, who's now the Senior Associate Commissioner at the South Atlantic Conference, was my mentor there as the AD, and decided to scratch a business itch after that. Returned to USC Upstate at the time, was their director of athletics marketing for about a season and a half, helping them transition into their Division I capacity, which is where, of course, I worked primarily with Eddie Payne, and was very involved with the men's program there, which was an experience that later has paid extraordinary dividends for me. And decided, I'm sitting on the, I'm on the sideline, and I'm helping run a game, but it's not my team. And just when you think I'm about ready to be done with coaching, it was just tugging at me. And maybe it was those family ties and all those experiences that we have, but I decided to get back in. The unique thing about getting back in, you don't often get to return at the level that you were at. So to go back and get a head coaching gig was just not in the cards. So I had to pay dues again. And I volunteered for a year at Wingate University with Barbara Nelson, who had just stepped in there from Providence Day High School, had a ton of success. And then again, made a switch, worked for Todd Starkey at Lenore Ryan University. Of course, Todd is now the head coach at Kent State University. But Todd and I worked together for 4 or 5 years, had a ton of success, league championship, #1 seed in the regional tournament. Just really, really, really enjoyed that experience with him. And he left to go to Indiana as an assistant, and I took over the head coaching position there. Was there for 3 years, moved up and out, took the associate head coaching position at Marshall University in Conference USA. Thought, why not West Virginia? Try it, see if I like it. And then my buddy, who called me on that first day for that first full-time job at $20,000, got the head job at Georgia State down in Atlanta. And he said, "Come on down." And spent my final year of coaching with Gene We had a very good season, a postseason appearance, a lot of success that first year, but then decided 22 years is a long time, and I'm ready to try some different things. And took a professional sabbatical, Jamal, this past summer. Decided to step away from coaching, and took about 2 or 3 months and spent some time exploring what else is out there, what other opportunities had I kind of created without knowing I'd created them. And through basketball, Rebecca Tillett and Griff Aldrich, the head men's women's basketball coaches at Longwood University, both knew me. I knew Griff through Ryan Odom, of course, who's at UMBC. He and I worked together at LR, and of course, I knew Rebecca on the women's side. And they said, our new AD is hiring a new associate AD for external, and she wants to go outside the box. Are you still looking and trying to figure out what you want to do? And I said, yeah. They said, well, what do you think about Longwood? And I thought, been a minute since I've been to Farmville. Michelle Meadows, the athletics director here, just wasn't going to take no for an answer. And it's been just a tremendous journey ever since. So I now sit as the associate director of athletics for external operations and senior women administrator for Longwood. So we're in the Big South. So we're in and around the area. Obviously, our conference offices are in Charlotte. Get to see all my fine peers and friends on the sidelines. Make sure that everybody's taken care of, and spend a lot of my time with everything public facing. The athletics department, making sure that we're showcasing ourselves in the best way possible. So
there we are.
I skipped the mentor part, but there's so many. There's such a long list. I could go on forever about that, but there are many.
Gotcha. I'm gonna take a quick question from Facebook, and it's kind of is going to tie into the very last question. But would you advise young players to get into coaching?
There's no question. It is extremely rewarding. I think one of the really interesting parts is if you have a young person and they're impressionable and they're eager and they're hungry and they're energetic and they want to roll up their sleeves and just be spongy, it'll change your life. I'm absolutely convinced of it. It'll change your life because you're going to learn about yourself and you're going to learn people. You're going to learn the game, of course, but the residual things that we learn as coaches, I'd say probably 99% of the time don't have anything to do with the ball. You and I both know that some of our greatest lessons and experiences are those exact young coaches, those young players that become coaches. Talk about it all the time. I had a great call with a former player the other day. She sent me a deck of yoga cards in the mail as a thank you. And I was like, oh my God, she's giving back. I've taught her something. Yes, I would advise young people to get into coaching. There's a lot to learn. You get to learn business. You get to learn communications. You get to learn human resources. There's a lot of layers to it that I wish people talked more about, so that players could realize, man, this is all encompassing. I'm about to learn something that covers a lot of bases in coaching and out of coaching that are extremely valuable skill sets.
So with that, you talked about, let's go back to Coker a little bit, and then I'm gonna speed us through.
Okay.
After that game, you told them that they would never let you feel this way again if they did exactly what you asked them to do, and they didn't deviate from it. How did you go about building that culture to help them achieve what we all love so much, the get back, the redemption, but to see the joy on their faces when they win? Well, how'd you go about building that culture?
It's a great question. For me, being blessed enough to have a Hall of Fame coach in my family. There was an article, this was many years ago, it was written when I was at Belmont Abbey. I could not get through. I'm a post coach, so I do bigs all the time. So I'm post coach, and and I'm like, oh, guards. I just need a guard, so they throw me the ball. But is taking an attitude of it's okay to not have the answer. It is okay to not have an answer, and to solicit feedback from people that were in my circle that I trusted to give me really good information. So a couple examples of that after that first year, and I asked my mom, I'm like, God, Mom, and she never gave me advice unless I asked her for it. She came from, her friends were, Vivian Stringer, Renee Portland, Tara Vanderveer. I mean, that's who was in the Big Ten when she was coaching. I said, I gotta figure this out. what can I do to be better? And she said, well, start with this. During your next practice or in your first game, have 2 cameras. Have your person film your game or your practice, and have somebody else do nothing else but film you, because you need to know what you look like in pressure cooker situations. It was terrifying, because here I was, this young coach trying to flex my muscles and let them know I know what I'm talking about. Well, actually, I didn't know what I was talking about. I was trying to tell them that I knew what I was talking about. So that was my first time of seeing what a young coach looked like, and it happened to be me. So that started a cycle of asking for guidance from people who did know what they were talking about. So other coaches, other administrators, men's coaches. I talk to men's coaches all the time. So, in this instance where, this one game at Belmont Abbey, in fact, we were playing Coker. I could not get through to my bigs. I had a tough class. They weren't doing well. And I asked my mom, I said, I can't get through to them. And she said, well, why don't you start 5 guards? If you're that edgy about it, start 5 guards. And I said, no way. I'm like, I can't do that. And she said, why not? Why can't you? And I said, well, it's going to completely break away from my structure and my offenses and my schemes and everything that I've spent 12 months trying to build. And she said, it's 1 game. Do you think you can do it for 1 game? I was like, all right, she knows more than I do. So I did it. I took some guidance, jotted down. It's not like I didn't know offenses that we couldn't run. We made the adjustment and we won the game handily. And so again, it was just an example of, I don't have to put my head down and act like I know everything. Some valid self-analysis and asking people for help is exactly what flipped the script from that 41-point loss to what was an incredible redemption game. Incredible story for you and I after we get off this call.
All right.
And to see their faces and what took place against that same team on our home floor the following season, karma was in our favor, but we did our work on the front end.
I'll go to another question for Shane. Shane Nichols asked this.
Mm-hmm.
You know Shane?
Yes.
Okay. I know him too from when he was at Wofford and played at Wofford. We played together a lot. Have you been involved with head coaching searches? What are the top things that stand out when choosing one?
Mm-hmm. Yes, have absolutely been involved in head coaching searches. Other schools' head coaching searches, even like as of right now today, taking calls from folks and giving names. First things first, depending upon what level it is, whether it's high school or college, from a college side, number one, first and foremost, you've got to be a CEO of a business. You've got to understand that the last thing you get to do is coach basketball. So you've got to know and be an expert in every single area about operating a business. Now, here's the kicker, and I think this is the part that we tend to overlook more often than not. And friends have heard me say this a million times. The single most important decision for that head coach, whether it's a high school program, whether it's a college program, will be the people that you hire. I can't be an expert in everything, but by God, I can hire people that are. So again, going back to that valid self-analysis, where are my weak points as a leader? Where do I need to get better? The last time when I was at Lenore Ryan, I am terrible in late game situations. Horrible. I hated them. I was uncomfortable. Didn't matter if I prepped. There's just something about it. I couldn't, it just was not my strong point. So I hired someone whose it was. So, one of the assistants I hired, he was phenomenal in pressure cooker situations and his play action and play calls. He was a high school coach. I hired a high school guy. I got the recruiting part. I don't need a recruiter. I need a guy that can make the play calls in late game situations so that I can win these games and keep my job. So the head coach search process, and I had this conversation with our AD probably a couple months ago in prep for a talk for the WBCA, a CEO mentality that you can run all of it and understanding each of the pieces, the academic piece, all those types of things. Being able to communicate that this is much more than just basketball to you. Easing the mind of an athletics director that I don't have to worry about what he or she's going to put on social media, that you are the face of an athletics department, not just the face of your program, especially in the sports of basketball and football. It's so much bigger than just that roster of kids that you have. Is so this kind of this exemplary attitude of representing the college or university or the high school or the middle school or an AAU program in a way that allows for it to be further promoted. So kind of those pieces, your X's and O's, athletics directors are going to assume you already know that stuff. You should, if you're at a head coaching search, certainly for a college or university, you should already know that part. It's all of the soft skill sets that ADs are having to get answered now. I talk to agents, I talk to search firms, I talk to other administrators, and they keep coming back to kind of this soft skill thing. Can you run a business and be successful? Success, of course, comes in the areas of wins and losses first. If someone tells you that that's not a priority, they're probably lying. Let's be honest. There's severe attrition in the industry. You're talking about academic success. You're talking about graduation, APR rates, depending upon the level. Can you raise money? Can you sell? Can you get someone to write a check to pay for your shoes for your high school team? So it's, and none of this have I even mentioned, what kind of fast break are you going to run? I don't care what kind of fast break you're going to run. Are you going to win? Are you going to take care of your kids and keep them out of trouble? Good, you're hired. It's how can you make the AD job easier and make them look better?
Whew, a lot of information there. So, okay, now the next, so when you got Coker as a young coach, well, let's move forward a little bit. Let's move to Lenore Ryan a little bit. We'll go Belmont Abbey, that was second head coaching job. What was your first initial focus when you took over as the head coach there? And what was your first initial focus when you took over as head coach at Lenore Ryan?
Two things. When I went to Belmont Abbey, that was in the same conference as Coker. So it was actually an in-conference move. I think it's really important as we look at different positions. Just because I'm in the same league doesn't necessarily I'm in the same league. So a good example, Ronnie Fisher on the women's side was a longtime head coach at Presbyterian. You know, we were talking about Greg Nybert earlier.
Yep.
Was at Presbyterian and made a cross-conference move to Campbell University, and of course has had success there as well. You know, you can go behind the scenes and take a look at how one position was very different from the other. Coker to Belmont Abbey. Belmont Abbey was coming off of 6 consecutive conference championships. That was a winning program. I was losing to them. So it was kind of, you know, I want to be on that side now. Was evaluating the value in, you know, different administrations or different institutions, things like that. The position at Lenore Ryan it was a challenging one for anybody that has gone from an assistant to a head coach, whether it's at a high school or at a college in the same program. We came off of a tremendous amount of success when Todd was there. We worked 4 years with a class. We won everything, and we graduated 8 seniors. So it was depleted, cupboard bare. Todd was the smart one. He got out, he went to IU. And then I'm kind of like, oh, I want to be a head coach again. And it's taking over a program that you've been in that had a ton of success. It's very challenging because people just think, well, you're going to do it exactly how he did it. Well, Starkey would tell you he and I are nothing alike, which is why we worked so well together as we kind of fed off of each other. And, you know, the impression for me there was absolutely an elevation of required success. There was more demands on your time. There was more demand for results. All good things, of course, but it was next level for sure. For those that think that Division II is kind of the stepchild, there's a lot of Division II programs that won't make it onto a D1 schedule because the D1 don't want to play them. So,
right. So with that, what were your 2 focuses when you took over those 2?
At Belmont Abbey, it was certainly to try to continue the legacy of that program there. Just a lot of success. It's a different environment, trying to navigate. It's a Catholic private institution. There was kind of some new things that I had to learn. And so it was definitely trying to pick up some new things for my toolbox during that time. I took advantage of having an athletics director that was someone I deeply admired. And that was certainly a focus, was trying to spend some time with her and pick up some skills because she'd won a lot as a former women's basketball coach, but she was also a very, very highly regarded leader. So that was an absolute focus when I went there, as I wanted to be a sponge to Elaine Keeby. Taking over at Lenore Ryan after Todd left, I mean, I just wanted to be a head coach. I wanted to I wanted to be at the front of the line. I was the 4 years prior to that, I was tired of having the second voice, and I wanted the lead voice, and I wanted to get back to being a head coach. But at the same time, it did allow me to flex my muscles a little bit more with some auxiliary skills. A lot of committee work, was very, very much involved with our head coaching searches during that time. At Lenore Ryan, was involved with Ryan Odom's hire, certainly Everett Sullivan, who's the men's head coach there now. So was involved with all of those search committees, and really rolled my sleeves up with the WBCA during that time and with USA Basketball. So I wanted to expand myself quite a bit in that position.
So how was West Virginia at Marshall, Huntington, West Virginia?
I mean, it was great. I'm a football junkie, and I grew up, of course, on the Minnesota Vikings. So I was obsessed with Randy Moss, and I'm like, oh my God, this Randy Moss is school, and we are Marshall, and all that kind of stuff, all the cliches. But I think for me, most importantly, I had a chance to work for a brand new head coach. Tony Kemper had been the associate head coach there for a long time with Matt Daniels. Matt got out of the business, and Tony was promoted. And despite what everybody thinks, that you have to always know somebody, I did not know Tony. I'd never met him a day in my life. He didn't know me. He knew one thing. He knew he needed a veteran head coach in his associate position to help him navigate some very tricky waters in that first couple of years. I was fortunate enough, I had an agent who knew one of his assistants that helped get us connected, but Tony didn't know me from Adam. And the opportunity to go to a high mid-major institution and be in that company and that energy, that level of game and recruiting and kids and all the demands that go with high mid-major basketball. I mean, it was fantastic. It really was. Huntington, West Virginia is a tough place. If you haven't ever been there, it's a little hard. You might think just the movie, but it's a very intense community that supports its sports teams in a way that I have never seen at another institution. It is so close knit, and the story of that plane crash is one that is told to children, and to go out to that crash site and be a part of the legacy of Marshall athletics. I mean, my mom still says it. I still say "Go Herd." I mean, it's like it's burned in your brain. But to the time I was there, it was really amazing. Dan D'Antoni, of course, is the men's coach. That's when the men's program won the Conference USA tournament. We went on, of course, to the NCAA tournament, upset Wichita State. So it was really, really great. But it's off the grid, and it was a little bit too far off the grid for me. So the chance to get down to the A was an easy decision.
Well, and then finally you're at Georgia State. What ultimately, what was your breaking point after? I mean, you were 22 years into the business. Yep. On that side. What was ultimately the breaking point?
I think for me, really, and I say this, understanding that being a basketball coach, you asked the question earlier about what does a search look like for a head coach? At the end of the day, the job is still to teach kids the skill of basketball, right? So when I found myself walking into the gym for practice, and I'm going down to work with the bigs, and just being really transparent, I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, okay, how many steps can I get in practice? And when I thought that, how many steps can I get in practice? And that my focus wasn't on being excited about working on post moves, or how can we do a better job finishing around the rim, or what about executing this offense, or what little wrinkle can I add for this scouting report so that we can do our job defensively? That was a pretty good indicator. And so the question I get more than anything is, do you miss coaching? I can't believe you don't coach anymore. You should be coaching. I love basketball as much as I ever have. I just don't want to teach it anymore. That's all. That's all it is. I just don't want to teach it anymore. I can train my 8-year-old nephew in the driveway if I need my fix, or I can answer questions or watch film. I have friends say, hey, watch this film. Everybody sends me their Synergy passwords, and I'll look at their cuts. But it's just not, I'm just not as passionate about teaching the skills anymore. And that's when I knew, the trade-off of the industry is it's heavy. And if you don't love the teaching side of it, I don't know if you want to take on all the other stuff too.
Yeah, I definitely love that side, but you know, that's not,
Of
again,
course.
that's conversation.
And if you love it, why wouldn't you do it? My gosh, if you can coach basketball and get paid for it, whew, I did it for a long time. It was awesome.
So I'm gonna switch and ask a couple practice planning questions, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna ask some recruiting questions, and then we'll go into basically the other side of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you prepare? As I know it changed from Coker to Lenore Ryan, and even with Georgia State and uh, Marshall and other places you were assistants. How long did you, as a head coach, adequately take time to prepare for a practice?
I was obsessed with it. A lot of preparation. It was really important to me. I felt like if I ever stepped on the floor and myself or my staff didn't at least appear to be organized and prepared for what we needed to accomplish in that day, kind of put, you were a phenomenal player. If you know when a coach is prepared and you know when they're not. And if I'm going to try to get kids to buy in so that we can get that karma back that next season, I need to demonstrate that. And just I think about the flow of a practice. I was very intentional about how one thing went to the next. I'm a big proponent of, excuse me, teaching progression, building blocks. We're not gonna do the whole part. We're gonna do these little baby steps to work up to that. And that was very reflective in my practice plans, very much.
So, how did you decide what you would focus on each day in a particular practice?
I don't talk this much anymore, so you're make my voice go bad. It was always I've heard coaches that you've interviewed before. We always were going to start with ball handling. Kind of you go to the triple threat, dribble, pass, shoot. Is we were always going to start off with the basics. I'm a big person with fundamentals. The crazy thing is fundamentals can get boring, so we would be really focused on how can we make the fundamentals a little bit more fun. The last few years, I really got into station work. I got that from Barb Nelson. Of course, she's at Myers Park now. I really liked how she was running her practices. But then it would be aspects to some of our offenses, breaking down little pieces of it and building drill work out of that. Again, how can I make it fun? One thing I learned probably later than I wished to was building in a high degree of competitiveness to all of the drills that we were doing. It could be something ridiculous. I don't think it was illegal. I did gummy bears and gummy worms for everything. Like I would put things in the scouting report that says like buried under Jamal Brown, phenomenal player, blah, 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 line 4. If you're reading this right now, text Coach Pate, you get a bag of gummy bears. Just to try to put peas in the mashed potatoes so that the players were learning the skills or the breakdowns that we needed to make it fun and creative. I think you have to do that now more than ever to try to get players to latch on and to stay committed to the process.
You have to keep it competitive. Even talking about The Last Dance, people see Michael Jordan picking at Scott Burrell. I'll use him because that was the last episode, really. And it was good. He embraced it, though. Like, it made me feel good that, like, some of the times when I was that hard, abrasive teammate, I don't feel bad about it now. Then I felt bad about it, but I was like, I just want to win. And now I understand, like, when you want to win, you want to be great, you have to do those things. Mm-hmm. And competitiveness is a big thing. If you're not going to be competitive, then you don't need to be here. I think that is huge.
I think the last part is, and again, it's probably the thing that we as coaches hate to do the most, but the teams that do, and if you're not doing late game situations, every single day you're wrong. And it will come back, it will bite you in your ass when you least expect it. I was given a grid. It was a Blue Star boys basketball camp. Some people might have seen it. It's like, and I have to dig it up. I could send it to you. There's 40 or 50 late game situation scenarios on this sheet. And we would try to go through 3 or 4 each day that they would run in their boys basketball camps over the summer. You probably were in one of those camps. But you watch teams who have repped the pressure over and over again. And if they don't have to worry about the play action and they only have to worry about the energy and the anticipation and all that, but the play action is taken care of because you already know the answers to the test, well-prepared teams in the late game, and you know the ones that aren't. And it's because they practice it every day.
Yep. And that goes into also, I think that makes your job as the head coach easier, because now you don't have to wonder what you're going to say in that late game situation, except for, hey, this is just like situation number 25 that we did 2 days ago. Y'all already know what to do. We know what to execute. Run your plays, share the basketball, do what you've been doing to get you to this point, and don't crack under pressure. They'll break. We practiced this the other day. That's a simple coaching tidbit. Now, instead of having to figure out, oh my God, you're in that huddle with your coaching staff, like, what are we gonna do? There's 2 minutes left. We're down, blah, blah. Who should we put in? You already know the personnel to put in because you practiced it. Okay, hey, you go in, you go in, you go in. We're gonna go to this defense. So it makes it an easier coaching tactic too.
No question. Obviously, I didn't learn that in the beginning because I ended up hiring someone to do that for me.
I like to think sometimes I thrive under late game situations. For me, I need somebody who's more into, I can draw up a play, but I need more of an X and O person, because defense, I got you covered. Late game situation, I got you covered. I can recruit, but I still want somebody else who can recruit. But I need somebody that's like, okay, coach, I think this play will be good in this situation. Okay, cool. Let me see it. Oh, teach it. Let me watch you teach it. Now I know it. Cool. Thank you. I give you credit for that. Now I can draw it up. So that's because I keep my offense very simple. It's really a 4-out, 1-in, play like Jay Wright a little bit, pass, cut, stay spaced, set a ball screen, keep it rolling. But it's always good. So with that, how you're a post coach, I was a big, so to speak, I was that tweener. I was 3.5. Of course, I know Everett. I got introduced to Everett at an early age.
Oh, that's right. I didn't even think about that. You probably did.
Yeah, I got introduced to him at a very early age. He came home from, was he already gone from Louisville? He was either coming home from Louisville or he came home from his first year overseas, and he was playing in the summer league, and I was like 16. And they were like, yeah, you got to guard Everett Sullivan. I was like, care who that is? You talking about the guy from Hillcrest? Again, 16-year-old kid, don't know no better. And he comes out, and I mean, the first 3 or 4 minutes I'm guarding him, I'm like, can we switch? Like, this ain't working. But as I got older, I did get him one time. I caught him one in that same tournament. I got him back. But my team won all the games for
That's good. That's good.
Everett was a great player. But speaking of that, individual workouts, how important were they to you? And were they high energy, short, long? How were they?
Very, especially at that position. And I really did enjoy this part at GSU, because I had a chance to work with some really good bigs. Very, very intense, high degree of conditioning involved. That's the great thing is when you write up a workout, do you want to spend half your time working on conditioning drills? I don't. I can write in my conditioning into the individual skill instruction. So for me, it was based upon the personnel that I would have at any given time, was of course maximizing what are they already good at. You know, I think there's this misnomer, at least in my mind, certainly with guards or posts, whatever. I got to have 82 moves. I got to be able to do everything. I got to have a baby hook. I got to have a step through. I got to have an up and under. No, you don't. Be a freaking pro at 2. Do 2. You need a counter, and you need to be really good at that counter, and you need to be able to do it on the right side. You need to be able to do it on the left side. And that's it. That's it. So spent like all this just fluffy, frou-frou-y 900 move stuff. That's not real life. First of all, you're going to be lucky if you have a coach that'll run an offense for a big, okay? Because everything's guard oriented. One of the things I think as the game has kind of evolved over the last few years is, as we've pulled our forwards and post players away from the basket, is to develop some core ball handling skills. That was something that was really important, is can I take a back to the basket type post, which hardly exists anymore? Can I move her up to the high post and give her a couple options from up there so that we're able to spread the floor for our guards that are good at getting all the way to the basket? So really trying to decide, what type of play were we focused on? What's their best skill, and how do I make that best skill fit within the system of myself or the head coach? But within all of that, it's reps And I'm a perfectionist. If your footwork wasn't right, do it again. If you trap, do it again. You put the ball in the wrong hand, do it again. Do it again, do it again, do it again, until you're so sick and tired of hearing me say it that you start doing it the right way. So high degree of repetition, maximizing use of both hands, and getting it right. But as that process goes, celebrating the kid during the process. They want to make the basket before they've been taught how to make the move. It's not how it works. Is there a celebration within the teaching progression? And I think this generation needs to be celebrated while they're making these baby steps. They think the big shot, well, you know what? If you learn how to do this move, that's already awesome. And I'm going to tell you it's awesome. So they've got to understand that piece, that the process is positive to get to the result, which is celebrated.
I'm gonna go one step further because me and actually Coach Allman talked about this last week. He was like the move and the counter move. I said, yeah, I teach my post players, even the ones that I train, I teach them a move, a counter move, and a counter move to the counter move. Because
Fair.
because you know, like I know, when you get to college, you read a scout report, you know exactly what that player is going to do to a T. Like it, there's, and you know it. You don't know when it's coming, but you
Right.
know it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can tell you, when I was at Western Kentucky my freshman year, my scout report said he has a jump hook to the middle, or he's going to do an up and under move.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank and period. That was it. And my coach was like, I don't know how you get people with it. He said, you're traveling with it, so we got to work on it. But you get people to fall for it, and you're able to score. And I was like, I mean, everybody wants to block a shot, coach. So that's what I've always been taught.
Yep.
And even when I got to college, people would know he's big. He can stretch the floor. He can shoot the three. He can put it on the floor, right or left. He's jump hook, fade away, blah, blah, blah. And one of my guys played for another team in our conference when I was at Cal State Fullerton. He actually, we were at half court laughing during pregame or whatever. I said, tell me what your scout report says about me, and I'll tell you what mine says about you. He started laughing. I was like, no, I'm serious. I said, okay, if you think I'm playing, I said, your scout report says blah, 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 blah. He was like, huh? I said, that's what your scout report says about you, and this is how we're going to guard you. Point blank and period. I didn't care because, I mean,
right.
You were going to have to figure it out regardless. So
Sure.
I didn't care. So he was like, well, yours says blah, 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 blah. You're an all-conference player. You're the best post player in the conference. Da, 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 da. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I said, but you know I'm going to drop 20 on you anyway because you just told me, right? He started laughing. But that's why I try to teach that counter move to the counter move, because at some point, even in high school, you have coaches that are going to watch you to a T.
Mm-hmm.
He goes right 85% of the time. And if he goes left, he's going to shoot a pull-up jumper. Or it's like, how do you know that? Because we watch film. It's like, okay. Mm-hmm. So that's why.
Well, even at that, that's just 3 moves.
Yeah.
When I'll watch a workout and I'm like, that's 8 moves. And when you get to, I'm like, when is that kid ever going to do that? Never. No, I'm with you on that. Simplicity is highly effective.
3 moves, and that's about all you need. You need it. And one of those is going to be a jump hook to the middle. Your counter is going to be a jump hook baseline, and you're going to up and under one way or the other, and you call it a day. And if you have to make more moves than that in a game, in a college game, you're going to turn the ball over. You're going to be double teamed. It's just not going to happen.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit recruiting, and then we'll get to the other side of basketball. How important is social media in recruiting nowadays, and how important is the recruitment of the parent? Because let's face it, nobody, especially in high school, we have to deal with it. There's no choice. But no college coach wants to deal with an annoying parent all day long. Mm-hmm. That's just, my kid should be playing, my kid should be playing. So how important is that recruitment of the social media of the kid, and then even the social media and the life of a parent?
Sure. That's a good point, the social media of the parent. As I'm sure you've talked to people, the social media background is huge. I think sometimes young people don't understand, or they don't believe when I say, what you put out there, even if your account's private, it's still going to be found out. People are going to know about it. I think the part that's a misnomer as coaches we pay attention to is how much time is someone spending on social media. If I look and I see someone's got, I don't know, over 100,000 tweets, or if they've got 55,000 followers on Instagram, that every other day they're posting 3 TikTok videos. It just, my concern isn't necessarily that the kid's a bad kid, not at all. But do they understand time? Do they understand priorities? And perhaps most importantly, to your point about parents or people that are in a support network of that young person, who are the people that are providing example, or kind of coaching a young person up on where should their time and energies be spent? To say a kid shouldn't be on social media. I'm all over social media, so I can't be a hypocrite, but I am very intentional about how I use my social media. Very intentional.
Yeah.
So I think embracing that young people are going to use it. We've got to accept that. If you can't be flexible and adaptable to that, you're gonna have a hard time in coaching. But how young people are using it, and I think we spend more time talking about how they shouldn't use it instead of talking more about how you can leverage this. I think that's really important. I mean, it's the irony. I took a text message today from a dad whose kid at another school I'd recruited like 3 years ago, and she just opened up her recruitment. And he said, "Can you send her highlights to anybody that you know?" And so, talking about parents, it's extremely important. Those are the ears and the mouths that are going to get the messaging from the young person first. My relationship with parents was absolutely paramount. I didn't give them full disclosure, but I did tell them, I'll talk to you about anything but playing time. You're not at practice every day. You're not in those workouts every day. You get a snapshot of her games. That's it. So when you're wondering why this, why that, I have a whole body of evidence that supports my coaching decisions. But letting parents know they're valued. I know there's probably people saying you are out of your mind, Katie, but they have to feel valued. There's parents that are, I'm 45, for God's sakes. These kids are, there's parents that are younger than I am, obviously. The parents need to be valued in the process too. And information for them is extremely powerful. Just sharing information with them is really important. But if you get a parent all over social media, you get a parent who's burning up your phone or acts like a complete idiot when you're watching an AAU game. I mean, even the great players, the great coaches won't touch them with a 10-foot pole. Muffet McGraw, who just retired, I was at a coach's academy several years ago, and she was speaking, and she talked about parents, and they would scan, her staff would scan the sidelines at AAU tournaments, trying to figure out which parent belonged to which kid. And once they figured it out, they watched them as much as they watched the player, because you just can't, there's no time for it. So it's unfortunate when you see a parent cost a kid. And there's a litany of information out there that is a discussion for another day on how parents can really be helpful to their children during the recruiting process, because they can screw it up for them.
Yeah, that's true. So now here we go to the other side of basketball. I know that a lot of people, and it's good because you're on the other side of it now and having been on the sideline. With that, how, because we as fans or fans in general only see the 40 minutes of a game on the sideline, or the 2-hour practice that they may get invited to as a high school coach or as a parent on a recruiting visit. We only see that, or they only see that, I should say. Talk about how important the business aspect of coaching in high school and college is, more so than that 10 to 15% that happens on the sideline or in practice.
Well, I think just simply when you're managing your operations well, it's going to allow you to enjoy the 40 minutes on the floor. So how you spend your time and how you lead in all the other areas, even at the high school level, you still got to check on your kids' grades. If you have college level players, you're still going to work on their recruitment. You're going to take calls. You're going to go to the Lions Club. You're going to go to Rotary and speak about your season. You're going to do a pancake fundraiser. You're going to have your developmental little kids, your elementary school program that's going to ultimately funnel into your high school program. That's a long list. And for high school coaches, oh yeah, you're also probably a teacher or a business owner, and you got a full-time job. You might have kids, a wife, a husband, and everything else. So I think trying to prioritize what are the most important things for your program that are going to lead you to that 40 minutes of joy coaching on the court. So you think about the academic area, and you certainly think about the business and the financial side of things, is just being cognizant that when your house is in order, things are good. But to be under any assumption at any level that it is just about coaching basketball just really isn't reality. And that's okay. If you at least acknowledge what it is, you can figure it out or have people help and assist. There is one value with parents. You want parents to be involved, let them run the pancake fundraiser. Let them be engaged in ways that helps them feel a part of, but that they're not maybe inside the fine details of your program. But it is a lot, and certainly at the college level, as you look at the number of people that are on staff, certainly at Division I. I'm at a very small Division I institution. I have a 12-person team. 12 people are in the external unit, full-time people. And just to be able to, keep a Division I athletics department on the external side, keep its head above water. And I don't have anything to do with compliance, grades. I don't have anything to do with internal. So I just think just understanding and being honest about how much work goes into it will help coaches prioritize. You could talk all day long about all the different things you have to do, but keep your kids eligible, keep your kids' grades up. You got to do that in order to play games. Otherwise, you're not going to be players. And certainly, I think how you're able to demonstrate your ability to manage all aspects of your programs are also very good indicators for college coaches. During the recruiting process, we knew who had good players, but we also knew who ran good programs. So even maybe the third or fourth kid on that bench, they may not be the most talented, but they're coming from a system and they're coming from a discipline and mechanics and structure that leads me to believe she's going to get it when she gets to my level, even if she isn't the best. So it's all of that, but prioritizing and just being transparent with it. You're going to have to do a lot more than just coach.
How important is it to build your brand as a coach, but you're really building your brand as a person, meaning you have to deal with alumni, you have to deal with boosters, you have to deal with, fans, the media. How important is it to build that brand of, let's say for me, Jamal Brown, if I'm the head coach at blah, blah, blah university?
That brand will be the single thing that will differentiate you from everybody else. If nothing else, certainly as I acquire knowledge, information, networking, contacts, that's I can use that as I want. But I'm not kidding. It will be the thing that will define whether or not you find success at your current place, or if you want to move. Certainly, if you want to move up, your brand is going to be your calling card or your business card on what that next step looks like. So again, I go back to how can you entrench yourself in your industry, if I'm on the men's side, my goodness, get on an NABC committee. Be a member of the NABC. Invest in yourself by buying a membership. I know that organization is massive. Just to have acquired relationships with people who believe in you. I can't think of another thing, Jamal, frankly, as a coach or as a leader of a program that is more important than your brand, because it'll also be the brand of your kids, because they're going to emulate their leadership at the end of the day. And if yours is good, they're going to be good.
Then even with that, because again, we're still talking the business part of basketball, and I know you touched on it a little bit when you talked about who you were hiring, but talk about how important it is not only just to hire somebody that fits your needs, but it's going to fit your brand's needs, because ultimately they're going to be representing your brand too. And then they're going to be representing the bigger brand that you guys have as, the head coach of blah, blah, blah university. So talk about how important that is as well.
Well, I think that's how you should always be shortlisting. Always. It fascinates me, and I talk to peers about this when I have people call and say, okay, who's your short list? And my first thought is, When you don't have one, you need to have one at all times. You need to be working to identify people in the business that fit your brand, fit your needs, can fill my gaps where I'm not great, but have a high degree of professionalism, that believe in the same principles that I do. That again, as we evaluate talent as recruiters, certainly on the college side, the savvy head coaches are always interviewing. You hear it all the time, always. The first Final Four convention I went to as a coach was, this is in 1997, I think. And I remember asking for one piece of advice from someone, and they said, just remember that you're always going to be interviewed. No matter where you are at this convention, they're watching you, they're looking at you, they're observing. And I picked that up everywhere I've gone. I'm always watching coaches. I'm always talking to people. Like, I've had to hire assistant ADs for facilities. I didn't know any assistant ADs for facilities this year. I only know coaches. Well, by God, I have a short list now. You think I'm ready? The next time I got to hire an assistant AD for facilities, I got 3 guys I can call. But that takes work. You got to be aware of that.
Right. With that, again, still building the brand, how important are the players in that part, in that aspect of building your brand?
Well, they're your little appendages. I mean, they're your example, because if you're the teacher and they're the student, you want the student to reflect what they're learning. And if you got a bunch of riffraff running around, I'm going to kind of be like, dang, what's he teaching over there? But I say all that in a positive frame. Those are our greatest successes, is when we see the knowledge that was imparted to us by somebody else that we trusted, and we're able to pass it along to these young people. And then they exude that in a way that people can see. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why we do what we do, right?
Right.
And so certainly having a very serious attention to, we are charged with the responsibility of bringing up young people, and what they look like and how they work and how they believe is a direct extension of me. No question. I take that very seriously.
So this will be, I think I'll make this my final question.
Okay.
You have to answer one or the other. Yeah, I'm putting pressure on. I did this yesterday and I got the same response. I'm putting pressure on. And this is a question I'm trying to ask everybody. Ultimately, we know they go hand in hand, but do the coaches make the players, or do the players make the coaches?
My God, jeez.
That's the same response Jessica gave me yesterday.
I was going to say, I saw Jess on here yesterday.
She gave the same response.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm a believer in balance. I know that there have been some incredible young people I've had a chance to coach who have taught me some of my most important life lessons. I'll say this because my answer a couple years ago would have been different. I'm going to keep this in the context of, do players make coaches, or do coaches make players? For me now, I would say players make me who I am. I'm at a point in my career with some time. There's a lot of things that I have to learn still. This is a generation of young people, whether it's our student athletes at Longwood University, or frankly, even my staff. Half my staff is under the age of 25. And they teach me something every day, whether it's a piece of technology, whether it's a different way to motivate a young person. How they look at things is very different from me. So I think from my standpoint, making myself available to new and different kinds of thinking is extremely valuable to my professional development. Folks that say this generation player or this generation is terrible, they don't work hard and all this. Have you ever asked for some of their ideas? Because they're some of the smartest minds I've ever met. Absolutely some of the smartest minds I've ever met. So for me, at this point, I'm going to say their ability to influence my professional process is greater than my ability to influence theirs.
Well, I appreciate it, Coach. Coach Walsh just put
I
up.
see that.
He said, Billy Graham said a coach will influence more young people than the average adult will in a lifetime, but they're consistently teaching us if there is that mutual respect.
Mhm.
I think that is great. And Billy Graham did say that, and that is a factual truth, especially with young players rotating in and out every 4
Mhm.
years.
No question.
Um, Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
This has been the business side of basketball. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm sure Katie will be back because we're friends, so she'll be back. I'm gonna make her. I'm gonna go ahead and invite her back, like Coach Kern invited herself back yesterday. But thank you again for tuning in. This will be on my YouTube page and my Facebook and Coach Pate's Facebook page. Thanks.